Hi, my name is Nancy Pierre, CEO of Homecare, Homecare and Training Services. And this is Homecare, Homecare 101 podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about preparing for discharge. Preparing for discharge, when I say that, we'll be looking at different facets of it, and it depends on where that your loved one is being discharged from. So a lot of times that we get phone calls from long-term care facility, assisted living facility, or the hospital, or the insurance company itself, stating that they have a client, here's the services that they need, and they're going to be discharged, within a week or today, tomorrow. The calls come at different times. But this conversation is for families who they're going to be receiving a loved one in the home. There's been a change in health status. So the person who went into the hospital or the facility is not the same person who's coming home. And so I'm going to say, therefore, there are some changes that may need to be done, in the home environment. And of course, we're going to start home care services. So preparing for the discharge, and I like to use my mother's situation. My mother lives in a 2-story colonial in New York, and in Queens, to be specific. And when she was being discharged back home, and she was being discharged from from the hospital, actually, because my mom went into the hospital, discharged to rehab. She was in rehab, I believe, possibly about 3 months, back to the hospital, and then she was discharged home. And when we were making the decision for her not to go back to the rehab facility, we looked at the house and we were like, there's a lot of changes that need to be made so that it is a place conducive to receive services, and so that it's a safe place for the caregiver to come to work every day, and it's a place that the client, or my mom in this case, can receive care. And this is very important, and I just want to take a minute. One of the things that we do when we go into patients' homes is we do, as part of the patient clinical assessment, or initial assessment, we do an environmental home safety assessment. So is this home even safe for this person to come and receive care? And some of the places that we look at are the bathroom. Are there loose rugs? Is the kitchen, does it have a fridge? Does it have running water? And you'd be surprised and why we're stating these things in particular. I did walk into a gentleman's home who was being discharged from a facility. He lived by himself in the house where his parents passed away. I believe the home was still owned by his brother, and the brother allowed him to live there. And he's now probably in his 70s. And he was being discharged back home. And when I got to the house to assist in assessing if we were going to start services, I was shocked at what I saw. He was a hoarder. So literally, there was, I'm going to say, refuse up to my eyeballs. And I'm not a short person, so it was right up to my eyeballs. And walking through to get to his room, I believe, posed many safety issues, many health issues. And I believe there was no running water. So when I walked through the back door to get to the bedroom, there was so much garbage in the house. Like I was stepping over bottles and containers of food or old food. And this was during the day. So I can only imagine what happens at night as far as rodents, as far as pests. So I walked in. I, took the intake of the actual client, of the actual patient, and asked him how he was living here. And he had no running water in the bathroom. The toilet had fungus growing out of it, just to give you an idea of what was going on in this place. And I could not start services for this individual, right? So starting services, in a normal situation, you might be like, what am I talking about? Like, why am I even going through this? But there are instances where I could not send a caregiver into that environment for the safety of that caregiver. And also, thankfully, the social worker from the facility, she was there as well. She could not discharge the patient into this environment. It's not safe for him, and it wouldn't be safe for an individual to provide any type of care or services for him. So, I ended up saying to him, I believe he even paid and everything. I refunded the money on the spot and said to the social worker that we would not be able to take the case. It is not a safe environment for him or for someone to come in to provide services. I think he was a little disappointed. But there were different agencies that need to be called in because he was living in a not safe situation. So to families, when you are initiating home care services, work with your discharge planner, work with the social worker of the facility or the hospital who will assist you in getting you a good agency, an agency in your area, an agency that has caregivers surrounding your area, so that depending upon the hours that you need or that you're approved for through insurance, through the insurance company, that you will have backup. And I always say this, you have to, for every one client, you should have at least 3 caregivers. And the reason for that is one person can call out sick, one person's car could break down while they're, on their way to the house. Or one of the other ones that I get a lot is maybe they have a sick child and they can't come in at that time. So making sure that you have, I'm going to say multiple flexible caregivers, and flexibility is key, right? People who have some type of flexibility, because a lot of times you may have someone who's a young grandparent and they're helping their daughter. So they want to be there to pick up their grandchild after school. So they can only work from 9 to 2. So like that, they have that short window, and that you're able to figure out what's the time that works for you, and do you like that, caregiver? And so that actually, I'm going to go into something else when I talk about liking the caregiver and what kind of caregiver. But preparing for service or preparing for the discharge, I'm talking more about the environment that's going to receive that individual, the environment in the home that's conducive to care. Grab bars in the bathroom if they're still, going around, maybe a walker. Maybe when grandma or grandpa went in, they could walk freely, but now they need a walker to get around. And so now that they need the walker to get around, I have to pick up the tattered rugs, and maybe just buff the floor. So just to add to that, in my mother's case, my mother, like I said, she lives in a 2-story colonial. We gutted the first floor, turned the dining room into her bedroom, got rid of, I'm going to say 90% of her furniture. I think I kept a recliner that was there in the living room. In the foyer, there's like a nice glass shelf where she has like all the family portraits and, beautiful frames. It's a gold pillars and glass shelving, and her what's the last thing in the dining room? Her china cabinet. She has a huge china cabinet from the floor to the ceiling. It's I'm gonna say bone, or like a ivory cream color, with the glass panels, with her china in there. So I'm gonna say that I was able to keep little pieces of her life in time living in her home. So now her room that's set up in the dining room has a hospital bed in it. It has another recliner that was in her room that was brought down for the caregivers or visitors. And it has, we have different chairs there for people to come sit and visit with her. But it's set up, I'm going to say, similar to a hospital room or a long-term care facility room. And it's set up that way so that she's comfortable and the caregiver is comfortable. She's right off from the kitchen that has a half bath. And so I call it her little apartment area. I put up some curtains, like some heavy curtains with nice wrought iron rods, so it's really nice, and closes her off from the living room. And this is her own space, and she has her TV, she has her radio, and she has her privacy. And then she's still, I say, a part of everything. So she's not up in the room on the second floor where no one, like, she would probably never see anybody. But so she's part of the hustle and bustle, but still has her privacy. So these are some of the things to think about when you're creating the space, but working with the discharge planner to get the proper items that you will need in the home: commode, walker, cane, Hoyer lift. That's the only way to get my mother out of the bed into the wheelchair. It's a hydraulic lift that picks her up out of the bed. But then, I'd have to make sure that I find a caregiver who knows how to use the lift. And of course, we've done that. But, and we'll talk a little bit more about finding the appropriate caregiver, but preparing for the discharge, preparing the space so that you could receive your loved one and they could live happily within their home. My name is Nancy Pierre, CEO of We Care Home Care and Training Services. This is We Care Home Care 101 podcast, preparing for discharge.